Single mom's heartfelt apology for a blind date with her son exposed an incredible surprise from. The tension was thick in Sarah's small kitchen, festooned with half-scorched candles and an air of nervous anticipation. This blind date she arranged for Jake could either strengthen their fragile bond or lay bare the fissures that deepened with each unspoken word. Her heart raced as she set the table, filled with an unsettling mix of hope and dread. What if Jake couldn't forgive her? What if he resented her for trying to push him into something so deeply personal? And what if, in some way, this evening mirrored the absence of the man who should have been here? The door swung open, and Jake stepped in, his lanky frame adorned with the arrogance of teenage defiance. "What's the deal, Mom?" His voice was a mix of impatience and curiosity. Every inch of her being wanted to turn back time, to reclaim the days when parenting had seemed far less complex. The soft warble of laughter and conversation she imagined crumbled against the stark reality of a son nearly ready to break free. Dinner started, that awkward silence stretching painfully long. With every bite, Sarah felt herself question each decision that led them to this point, raising a boy without a father in a world that seemed to celebrate family. The casual conversation took a sharp turn when Jake bitterly remarked about his father. Funny how he just vanished without a word. That's real parental love, right? The table felt like it was closing in on her, every breath made harder by the pain twisting in her chest. She hadn't meant to shield Jake from his father's abandonment, she only wanted to guard him from the hurt she had experienced when Tom had walked out of their lives. Before she could respond, their date, a girl named Emily, shifted nervously in her seat, which only amplified the discomfort. Desperately wanting to divert their attention, Sarah instinctively reached for her phone, the urge to escape into her notifications nearly overwhelming her. The weight of her silence grew unbearable, twisting like a noose around her heart. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With a waver in her voice, Sarah forced herself to speak. Jake, the moment unraveled until the shadow of her past enveloped them, an apology hanging ripe in the air like a soggy piece of bread. She needed him to understand that it was never about keeping him in the dark. It was about protecting him. But it felt like a weak excuse now, shrouded in the unrelenting truth of absence. Just as the evening spiraled out of control, an envelope slipped under the table, stopping them cold. Jake grabbed it, confusion flickering in his eyes. He tore it open, and as he read the words inside, a whirlwind of emotions flooded his face. The letter detailed the name of his grandfather, a man whose existence had been erased by time and choices. Would this newfound thread of family pull him towards an uncertain future? Or would it deepen the divide between him and the woman who had fought for his breath from the very start? Awkward silence thickened the air again as they sat on the brink of revelation, the premonition of tears or resignation flickering in their gazes. Sarah's heart ached for her son, aware that this moment would irreversibly shift the ground beneath their feet. The night hadn't ended yet, but neither had the journey of discovery that could define them. What would Jake choose now? Sarah's mind raced, caught between the weight of Jake's revelation and the ghost of her own decisions. The letter lay crumpled in Jake's hand, a tangible link to a family history she had tucked away like a forgotten jacket in the back of the closet. She could feel the tremors of change in the air, a shift that threatened to unravel the fragile threads that held them together. "What does it say?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, an urgency to bridge the growing chasm between them. Jake's expression shifted, and the anger she had seen earlier began to merge with something else, curiosity, perhaps, or even longing. "It's about some guy named Bill," he muttered, as if the name alone was a bitter pill. "My grandfather." The word hung heavy in the air, laden with unexplored relationships and emotional weight. "I know it's a lot to take in," but Sarah started, desperate to connect amid the cacophony of emotions. "Why didn't you tell me?" Jake interrupted, his voice a mixture of hurt and incredulity. The question was both accusatory and genuine, a dagger that pierced through the silence. Taking a breath, she steeled herself, aware this was no longer about them simply sitting through a dinner with awkward small talk. Because I was afraid of what it might do to you. I thought you'd be better off not knowing who he was, she explained, brushing her fingers against the edge of the table, seeking stability in something solid. But the truth is, I was just trying to protect myself. It's not easy to share those parts of our lives. Jake sat back in his chair, his arms crossed over his chest, the defensive posture echoing the wall he had built up over the years. And how's that working out for you? He shot back. The question wasn't just aimed at their family history but at the very foundation of their relationship, at Sarah's incessant need to guard him from the world. The knot in Sarah's stomach twisted tighter. She had long harbored the conviction that keeping the truth from Jake safeguarded him from the pain she had endured. But as she watched the betrayal seep into her son's expression, she realized it had done the opposite. He had lived in a twilight of truth, one that now threatened to break into painful brightness. Look, I know I've made mistakes, she pressed on, vulnerability creeping into her voice. I thought I was being a good mom by sheltering you, but it was really just my fear. I didn't want to lose you too. The raw honesty was liberating, each word bearing the weight of her struggle. Jake considered her words, a flicker of understanding across his brow. So you thought lying would protect me? He asked, lowering his arms. The defensiveness was slowly cracking, revealing a curiosity that overwhelmed his hurt. Yes, Sarah admitted, her voice thick with emotion. But in doing so, I lost your trust. I was scared, Jake. I've always been scared of repeating the past, and of you feeling abandoned. She took a risky step forward emotionally, needing him to see her not just as a mother, but as a flawed human, trying to navigate an impossible situation. Jake's gaze fell, studying the table. The air shifted again, thick with potential, and just as a breath of hope unfurled, he suddenly lifted his head. I don't know, Mom. Part of me wants to know more about this grandfather. But I also feel betrayed. Sarah felt as though the ground had shifted beneath her once more. This was no longer a simple dinner, it was a poignant crossroads. You don't have to decide everything right now. We can figure this out together, she offered, anchoring the conversation with sincerity. The spaces between them had narrowed, but Jake's struggle lingered unspoken, like a ball of tangled yarn waiting to be unraveled. I just don't want to keep going back and forth between wanting family and wanting to push people away, he finally said, the vulnerability obvious in his tone. Sarah held her breath, conscious that each second that passed was laced with critical importance. Maybe you won't have to, she murmured, grasping for a next step, a breakthrough that could potentially redefine their relationship. As Jake studied her intently, determination flickered in his eyes. What if I want to meet him? The question hung heavy and bright, casting a new light on their options. Would the choice to reach out embody healing or further cause fractures in their already delicate bond? Sarah's heart raced, unsure of what this new pursuit could unveil, both for Jake and herself. A new chapter lay ahead, teasing them with possibilities and fears alike. Just as she pondered how they might navigate the upcoming tide, she felt the weight of an untold story threatening to surface, one that wasn't just tied to Jake's grandfather, but also to her own past. What skeletons did she have yet to confront? How far would they both have to go to mend the broken pieces of their lives? Sarah paced the length of her modest kitchen, her thoughts tangled like the forgotten wires of an old phone charger. The prospect of Jake wanting to meet his grandfather both thrilled and terrified her. They had spent years navigating the rocky terrains of her concealed truths, and now, the looming decision of whether Jake should connect with Bill felt monumental. She stopped by the window, staring out at the neighbors' yards, where children played without a care in the world. The innocence of youth reminded her of Jake's younger days, back when trivial things like dinner conversations and light-hearted banter were all that mattered. She longed for those simpler times, yet realized how naive it was to think that wasn't a part of their past that had shifted, how forging a connection with an estranged grandfather could shatter those memories into a million scattered pieces. Should I discourage him? She asked herself, the question echoing back like a taunting whisper. Yet a deeper part of her knew this was a choice she had to support, as agonizing as it may be. But what if he gets hurt? The thought snaked through her like ice, evoking all the fears she had so long buried. she needed a strategy, a plan to approach this new chapter carefully. For Jake's benefit, she began to write down snippets of her past and outline of things he would need to know if they were to embark on this journey together. Each stroke of the pen felt liberating, yet daunting. She had always been the stoic figure, the one to hold things together, but perhaps it was time to unravel some knots and share the story woven through years of silence. Okay, focus. She mentally shook herself free from the cascading doubts. I need to be honest, and I need to prepare him for the unexpected. The letter still sat at the table's edge, its wrinkled surface a testament to the upheaval in both their lives. She picked it up, examining the ink that had etched Bill's name into their world. A blend of heartache and hope weighed heavily on her. Could reconciliation mend their family, or would it expose even deeper wounds? As the day turned to night, the familiar comfort of the setting sun offered little solace. Instead, she felt the turbulence of anxiety shatter the peaceful ambience. When Jake wandered into the kitchen, she noticed the changes in him, both subtle and significant. The resolve in his demeanor hinted at the determination building within him to reclaim a heritage he had persistently been denied. Mom, can we talk about Bill? Jake's voice broke through her musings, commanding her attention. The earnestness of his inquiry painted him in a new light, one of maturity and growth. He was no longer just her son, but a young man yearning to forge his own identity apart from the shadows of unspoken family narratives. Taking a deep breath, she met his gaze. Of course. Let us sit down. With the weight of her choices still swirling in her heart, she initiated the dialogue that would inevitably alter their relationship forever. As they shared their thoughts about Bill and what his existence might mean for their future, Sarah sensed Jake's ambitions to probe into the past, a quest for an understanding she hadn't anticipated. More significantly, she felt the gradual shift in their dynamic, as if the proxy of family ties were being redefined beneath the surface. What if I decide to reach out to him? Jake asked, an uncertain yet hopeful note nestled in his tone. Then we will approach it together, Sarah replied, her pulse racing. Supporting Jake now meant confronting the intricacies of her history that had long been obscured. She was determined to help him navigate this terrain, regardless of where it might lead them both. The conversation flowed, a weaving tapestry of emotions, and though they remained wary of what lay ahead, they were undeniably closer. The barriers that once isolated Sarah from Jake's aspirations started to crumble, replaced with an unwavering alliance. Everything felt like it was on the brink of change that was both exhilarating and terrifying. Could this be the moment when they both discover the strength to face their intertwined pasts, or would the weight of hidden truths anchor them down? Just as Jake opened his mouth to voice another question, the doorbell rang, slicing through the heavy air with an abruptness that sent them both jumping. The unexpected visitor could only bring uncertainty and a whirlwind of emotion. Sarah felt a sudden chill. Would they now have to confront whatever came next, head-on? The doorbell's chime reverberated in Sarah's chest, each ring amplifying the uncertainty that flooded her mind. She exchanged a quick glance with Jake, whose expression mirrored her own mix of apprehension and curiosity. Should I? She started, her voice trailing off as she hesitated. The conflicting emotions whirled inside her, the reliable wariness of the past battled with the slight thrill of unexpected visitors. No, Jake interjected softly but firmly, urging her to remain still. Let me answer it. He placed a hand on the doorknob, his bravery surprising her. It was in that small act of confidence that Sarah recognized the shift. The growing man before her was not just asking questions about Bill, he was taking initiative to confront things head-on. As Jake opened the door, Sarah felt a rush of vulnerability wash over her. The door swung wide, revealing a man whose rugged appearance bore the marks of years gone by, wrinkles sketched by life's trials and not just age. The sight of him jolted her senses, igniting a complex array of emotions. Could this be Bill? Is this the Brown residence? The man asked, standing a little too rigidly. His voice was deep yet shaky, as if he weren't entirely sure of the path he had just taken. Who's asking? Sarah replied, her protective instincts flaring up. Mom, it's him. Jake exclaimed, his voice filled with awe and disbelief. Sarah's heart dropped. The hesitation she'd felt moments ago transformed into a whirlpool of anxiety. Stay back, she warned Jake instinctively, though a part of her knew this moment was inevitable. The air thickened with tension as she processed the reality of her son's burgeoning relationship with a man long buried in the archives of their family history. "Sarah, I need to talk to you," Bill stated, each word heavy with unspoken apologies and regrets. She tried to gauge his expression, searching for the flicker of remorse, of understanding. Instead, she found an unwavering gaze that carried the weight of years but also an unwavering determination. "Now?" she replied, her voice revealed more than just uncertainty. It betrayed a mix of anger and hurt simmering beneath the surface. "I know it's sudden. But I've come to realize," he paused, running a hand through his hair, a gesture reminiscent of remorse yet laced with an edge of defiance. "Realize what?" Sarah pressed, venom lacing her tone. She was unprepared to tiptoe around emotions buried too deep to navigate lightly. "Realize that I missed out on Jake's life," he finished, his gaze unwavering as he shifted between both of them. In that moment, the atmosphere became electric with unresolved conflict. Sarah's heart raced. She had spent years building an identity imbued with resilience, but now it felt as if that identity was being challenged by the man who had once vowed to leave them behind. "What do you want?" she managed to say, her voice shaking slightly. This was no longer just an opportunity for Jake, it felt like a ballad surfacing the dark ballads of her past. "I want Jake to know his family, our family. I can't change the past, but I want to be part of the future," Bill replied, vulnerability radiating from his words. A storm brewed in Sarah's mind. This was a moment of truth, but it felt like stepping onto a precipice, each step tantalizingly close to potential disaster. Both her instincts and her ambitions battled. Was she ready to dissect the wounds of their history? Could she let her son walk into the uncertainties that had long haunted her? "Jake, we need to," she hesitated, uncertain of how to guide him through this labyrinth of choices. Suddenly, Jake intervened, stepping up to Bill. "How can we trust you?" he asked, his youthful resolve sparking a fire that lit the many shadows of their past. The question hung in the air, electrifying their surroundings. As Sarah wrestled with her instinct to shield Jake, she recognized that, inevitably, decisions must shape their future. One inch could define how they progressed together or apart. Would she finally summon the courage to unravel her tightly woven past to embrace the uncertainty of tomorrow? Outside, thunder rolled in the distance, mirroring the seismic shift in their lives. Would they emerge from the storm on the other side rebuilt, renewed? Or would the very foundations of their relationship fracture under the weight of history? Just as she opened her mouth to speak, a tremor in her voice, a piece of the truth both exhilarating and terrifying slipped through her mind. Was it possible she still held a part of her own identity buried deep among those shadows? Would she rise to define her own narrative, or would Bill's presence force them all to confront the ghosts they'd avoided for far too long? The stillness following Jake's question was suffocating. Sarah's chest tightened, the weight of all their unspoken feelings pressing down around her. Her mind raced, grasping for how to navigate this precarious moment. Bill stood at the threshold, a ghost from a life she'd fought so hard to leave behind, while Jake's innocence hung in the balance, a flickering candle amidst stormy winds. "Sarah, please," Bill urged, his voice low but steady. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I can't just vanish again. I want to be here for Jake." A battle ignited within her. Each word he spoke was like a new dagger, both igniting her lingering hope and reawakening old wounds. She had molded her life, painstakingly crafting a path that diverged from the chaos Bill had left her stranded in. But now, here was a man asking for the very thing she had denied him for years, a chance at redemption. Was she ready to piece together the fragments of their shattered past? "Why should we believe you?" Her voice was sharpened steel. "You said those words before and disappeared. What's different this time?" Bill took a breath, as though he were pulling on deeper reserves within. "Because I finally understand what family means. I won't let fear or my past mistakes dictate who I can be. I can't change that I left, but I can show you that I can be here now." Jake shifted his weight from one foot to the other, his young eyes boring into Bill's. "But you missed everything," he declared. "It's not just about you wanting to be part of our lives. It's about what you've done. Yeah, Sarah added, realizing her voice had softened. This is about trust. You want us to believe that you can just step back into our lives, like it's all fine? Bill appeared momentarily lost, humility fighting through his rugged demeanor. I've spent years watching from the sidelines, regretting the choices I made. I want to be the kind of man who's there for you both. I want to earn your trust. Earning trust doesn't just happen overnight, Sarah reminded him, her heart thumping harder now with the confrontation. It requires consistency, sacrifice, and honesty, Jake chimed in, his youthful fervor igniting a tremor of pride within her. This was the product of those countless hours spent teaching him to be strong but fair, a testament to her efforts as a mother and protector. As silence enveloped them again, Sarah's mind grappled with what this moment could mean not just for Jake, but for herself. Could she allow an act of courage to reshape her identity? I have questions, she finally stated, her resolve beginning to crystallize. I'm not about to throw our lives into disarray. If you want to be part of this family, you need to be prepared to answer for everything. Bill nodded with surprising ease, each answer illuminating potential healing paths. As they began a dialogue, Sarah felt her heart rate steady, the chaotic tempest receding ever so slightly. The boundaries of their lives were beginning to shift not toward disaster but toward an uncertain potential, yet even as they talked, a gnawing uncertainty lingered in her gut. What if trust was something that could only be forged through missteps and heartaches? The prospect of a relationship built on honesty and shared vulnerability beckoned, but it was precarious. In the midst of these thoughts, she suddenly realized something critical: the power of choice had shifted back to her. She could reframe the narrative, not just for Jake, but for herself, a chance at rebuilding her identity alongside the possibility of forgiveness. Let us start with honesty, then, Sarah suggested, her tone firm yet contemplative. Share everything. No secrets. If you truly want to be part of our lives, you need to become an open book. As they shifted from exposition to exploration, Sarah felt the ground beneath them quaking anew. The old wounds might not heal instantly, but the pursuit of truth could construct a new foundation, a potential root from which they could grow. At that moment, the winds outside picked up, a prelude to rain. It felt as if nature echoed their tumultuous emotions, hinting that even as they sought clarity, storms were unavoidable. As she looked between Jake and Bill, fire rekindled in her heart, both fear and anticipation, but just as a flicker of hope broke through the clouds overhead, another thought surfaced, igniting her further. Did this reconciliation challenge her to confront everything she had been hiding about herself? Would she have the strength to redefine not only her past but also her vision of the future? The question lingered, ripe with possibility, as a crack of thunder rumbled in the distance. What shadows awaited them in the unfolding chaos? The rain began to fall, a steady drizzle that blurred the edges of the world outside. Inside, Sarah stood firm, fortified by the unwavering dialogue that forged a tentative connection. It was a moment that felt precarious but oddly liberating. This was the performance, a delicate dance between trust and vulnerability. She couldn't afford to falter now. Tell me about the person you've become, she demanded, her voice both command and curiosity. It was a question that cut deep into his past, and she noticed how Bill flinched slightly. This was the crux of their interaction. The weight of truth had to bear fruit, or else what was the point of risking everything? Bill took a moment, visibly piecing together his thoughts. I've made mistakes, so many, he replied, a haunting sincerity in his eyes. But I've learned to confront them. I realized that my absence created scars that wouldn't fade with mere apologies. I had to understand why I left and why I stayed away, he continued, his voice gaining strength. Now I want to take responsibility. A rush of bittersweet emotions cascaded through Sarah. Responsibility was a word she had worn like armor, learning to integrate it into her identity through years of hard work. But could she trust that Bill had finally learned the same lesson? In her world, responsibility meant management, control, and being the rock for Jake, not a fragile vessel waiting for someone else's validation. What does that even look like? She probed, skeptical yet intrigued. How do you plan on being part of Jake's life? It's not just about showing up and hoping we'll accept you. I want to show him that he can depend on me, Bill replied, cracking the steely exterior that had defined their past. And that means starting from scratch. I am a stranger to him, but I hope to become more than just that. The conversation tangibly shifted. The air between them became charged, reverberating with an urgency that wasn't initially there. Each shared word was a cautious bridge attempting to connect their conflicted past with a tentative future. Could she allow herself to envision a future that included him without the overwhelming recognition of pain? Then, backing away from the emotional confrontation, she recognized another burning question: her own identity, marred by previous failures and forged in the heat of solitary perseverance. If she allowed Bill back into their lives, what did that mean for her role as a mother? Could she even begin to let go of the singular identity she had grown accustomed to? "Do you think I can just let you into our lives without addressing the wreckage?" she demanded, her voice rising. "I've spent years building a life on my terms. A life that doesn't rely on you or anyone else. And now, I have to consider how this might change everything." "Sarah, I don't want to impose on your hard-earned peace," Bill replied, genuine concern etched into his face. "I just want to be part of this. I'm not here to disrupt, I'm here to rebuild." As Jake remained silent, absorbing their exchange, an unspoken understanding emerged. For all of Bill's regrets and past failures, Sarah's fears were rooted in her own insecurities. Would she have the strength to challenge those fears? To let go of resentment? This was not just about Bill regaining his place but about Sarah reconsidering her own stance, her foundation, everything she had stood for. But even as she weighed the intensity of her reactions, she sensed another wave crashing, a looming edge at the periphery. If she backed away from embracing this, what pieces of herself would she compromise? Footsteps approached from across the room, pulling her from the spiral of introspection. "We need to talk," Jake said, determination lining his features, an echo of both his mother's strength and his own resilience. The unexpected urgency in his tone sent a jolt through Sarah. It was clear that he had his thoughts tucked away, ready to confront both her choices and the chaos brewing in their world. "Okay, let us hear it," she replied, bracing herself for a fundamental revelation. What lay ahead? In this new chapter, reconciliation or further fracture? The answer loomed just beyond the immediate horizon, marked by the tension of both hope and apprehension. Jake stepped closer, his youthful face a mixture of determination and concern, solidifying his role as the unexpected anchor in this emotional storm. "Mom, I know you're caught up in all this with Bill," he began, his voice steady. "But I need you to really listen to me. It's not just about him, it's about us. Our family. This is about what you want." The weight of his words struck Sarah like a physical entity. The intensity in Jake's gaze, so mature yet still carrying the innocence of childhood, forced her to confront truths she had masked behind her own self-imposed barriers. She took a deep breath, squeezing her hands to suppress the rising tide of emotion. "Jake, I'm trying to navigate this," she offered, trying to balance her role as both mother and a woman faced with her past. "It's complicated with Bill. I've built this life for us, just the two of us, and I don't know if I can just..." "Mom, stop." His voice cut through her hesitation. "You keep talking about how he's messed things up and how you found a way to build a life without anyone else. But what about what you actually want? Have you thought about that?" Silence filled the space, thick like the rain running down the window. Sarah felt heat creep into her cheeks. The truth was uncomfortably clear. She had devoted so much time and energy toward protecting her son and herself from the past that she neglected her own desires. She glanced at Jake and opened her mouth to deny what he said, but the words faltered. "This could be a chance for something different," Jake continued, the pulse of resolve strong in his voice. "I used to think having my dad around would upset our life. But, maybe it could be okay. Couldn't it? He wants to be better. We don't have to forget what happened, but you could let him in a little if it's what you want." His perspective twisted the knife of conflict deeper into her heart. Could she risk the security she had created for them? The safety net she had painstakingly woven was fraying, and the suggestion of accepting Bill back felt like an invitation to dive into turbulent waters unprepared. "Jake, I've worked so hard to make a stable life for us. Adding him into the mix is complicated, but you're not some perfect monument to strength," Jake interjected, frustration brewing. "You're human too. You get to have dreams. You get to move on. That means facing this. If we're going to take this on as a family, I want to know you're honest with yourself about how you feel. Either way. Even if it scares you. Jake's fierce advocacy seized Sarah's heart with both love and fear. She thought about the years of her solitary struggle, her ambitions along with the weight of responsibility. Could she splice her life back together, a tapestry with woven strands of old memories and new beginnings? The duality was unbearable. Choosing whether to embrace the idea of Bill in their lives or clinging to familiarity felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, with both paths swirling into murky uncertainty. Do you think you could look him in the eye after everything? She asked, voice shaking. If he hurts us again, what then? I think I can, Jake replied quietly, strength in his simplicity. I want to believe people can change. Just like you did after he left. Maybe we could hold him accountable together. Together. The partnership reverberated in Sarah's heart, a tether to the contemplation she feared to acknowledge. Just as she began to process the weight of their discussion, she heard the barely audible sound of someone clearing their throat from the hallway. Bill had been lingering, evidently caught in the edge of vulnerability, ready to enter this conversation. His shadow loomed against the backdrop of the dim room, a manifestation of both her memories and the uncertainty of their future. Sorry, I didn't mean to eavesdrop, he said, his voice steady yet unsure, as if stepping onto a battlefield. I just want to support whatever you decide. The moment felt like the flick of a match poised to ignite the kindling of her choices. Now, Sarah truly stood at a precipice, the converging lines of past pains and emerging hopes colliding within her. Could she allow herself the grace of a second chance, not only for Jake and Bill but for the future she dared to envision for herself? The answer rested not only on Jake's courage but on her own resolve. And just as she contemplated, another voice echoed from the other room, slicing through her ruminations. Mom, come quick. You have to see this. What revelation awaited her beyond the threshold, and how might it shape the decisions that could redefine their family dynamic? The vibrant energy of their conversation faded into a quiet hum as Sarah processed everything Jake had just laid bare. An undercurrent of anticipation swept through her, the throaty excitement of change mingled with palpable anxiety. Mom! Hurry! Jake's urgent plea broke her from her trance, his voice carried by a youthful eagerness that seemed to bounce through the air, electrifying her spirit. Almost instinctively, she found her feet moving towards the source, the blend of confusion and curiosity propelling her forward. As she rounded the corner into the living room, her breath caught in her throat. The room was awash in a golden glow filtered through the evening light. But it wasn't the ambience that struck her, it was the sight of Jake standing next to a tall figure, his hand gripping the backrest of a familiar chair, as if it were an anchor amidst a whirlwind of unfamiliar feelings. Look who I found! Jake exclaimed, and for a fleeting moment, Sarah thought he had conjured some fragment of her past into the present. Sarah, Bill began, his usual hesitance replaced by an unusual confidence. I think it's about time we frankly address our situation. Your son brought me here because he believes in the possibility of second chances. Perhaps, I need to earn that belief. I want to prove I can be better. The words emerged thickly, weighted with the unspoken ramifications of their shared history. A montage of emotions flickered within Sarah, a flickering candlelight of hope, fear, regret, and love. Jake's resolute stance next to Bill painted such a stark contrast against the doubts that had cradled Sarah's heart for years. Mom, look! Jake interjected, pointing to a small table they had set in the corner, adorned with a bowl of fresh fruit, warm bread, and even her favorite wine. We thought we'd surprise you with a little dinner together. To talk. To see where we go from here. For a moment, she stood frozen, the dichotomy of her emotions swirling chaotically within. It was a simple meal, yet the significance felt monumental. Sitting down with Bill would mean daring to confront the very narrative that had eclipsed her life. Could she truly invite this man back into her heart, into their lives, or were they merely staging a facade for a hope that might crumble at the gentlest breath? Jake, she began, her voice faltering as uncertainty clawed at her insides. Just give it a chance, Mom, Jake urged gently, his youthful yet earnest eyes urging her to dissolve the thick veil of pretense she held around herself. "We can't fix what happened in the past, but we can start here, right now. No expectations. Just food. Just talk." She turned her gaze from Jake back to Bill, who now wore an expression that seemed foreboding yet hopeful. The tension thrumming between them felt like the sharp smallest knife of bliss and dread pricking her awareness to the undeniable truth that the future had entered through her door, demanding attention. What if she started, but stopped? What if she actively chose to throw herself into this moment? What if she allowed the vulnerability of connection, even for an evening, to take its course? "Okay," she finally exhaled, allowing the word to float into the air. A palpable shift occurred, not just in their surroundings but within Sarah herself. In that moment of decision, she embraced the uncertainty. Whether this dinner would heal wounds or reopen them, she could navigate it just as she had navigated life thus far, with raw honesty. As they settled around the table, the delightful aroma of the meal breathing life into the space, she felt the first inkling of something new. Just as she grasped her wineglass, another thought threaded itself through her mind. There was still unresolved tension with Bill, and the conversation they would all engage in would not be simplistic. "Before we begin," she mustered, her heart racing, "there are things we need to discuss. More than just pleasantries. It's time to confront the past." In the quiet aftermath of her declaration, an eerie stillness enveloped the room, pregnant with possibilities. And within that moment, she realized that this was merely the beginning of their fight to redefine what family meant for all of them. As she looked into the eyes of her son and then back at Bill, the weight of the coming confrontation loomed. Would she finally reclaim her narrative, steering their future towards redemption, or would it slip into the echoes of the past? With each beat of her heart, the next chapter beckoned, one filled with revelations that promised both hope and tumult. The atmosphere around the dinner table was thick with unexpressed thoughts. Sarah's heart raced as she felt the weight of her decision. This was not just a meal, it was a crossroads, a necessary confrontation of the ghosts that lingered in her home, masked under the guise of polite conversation. "Thank you for coming, Bill," she started, her voice steadier than she felt. "It can't be easy to sit here, knowing the hurt you've caused." He looked at her, and for the first time, she noticed the vulnerability etched into the contours of his brow. "I'm not here to make excuses," he began, his tone laced with somber sincerity. "I'm here to take responsibility. I lost everything because I failed to be the person I said I would be. You and Jake deserved better." As he spoke, a silent war waged within her. Part of Sarah longed to forgive, to see the man Jake believed could change. The other part felt an icy resolve not to let resentment fester any longer. This was not merely about Bill's accountability, it was about her reclamation of power over her own narrative. "Believing in someone isn't just about words," Sarah replied, her eyes narrowing slightly as she focused on him. "It's about consistent action. I've had to learn that the hard way." Jake shifted in his seat, the tension pulling visibly at his youthful features. "Mom, this is the first step. Can't we just focus on what happens next?" His voice was a fragile bridge between them, attempting to span the gap of pain into understanding. His innocence tugged at Sarah's heart, reminding her how badly she wanted to build a resilient family, one forged from understanding rather than resentment. "Jake's right. We have to find out what can come from this moment. But it's not as simple as just sitting and talking." Bill nodded, visibly absorbing her words. "I understand that, and I know it's going to take more than a dinner to mend what's been broken. Actions speak louder, and I realize now that I need to prove I can be trustworthy. I need to show my commitment, starting today." Sarah felt a stirring insistence within herself. She didn't want to wallow in the past anymore. "Then let us talk about what actions look like. What steps can you take to rebuild this?" Her voice, while forthright, was softened by a lingering tremor of hope. "I'm going to attend therapy. I plan to get a job and focus on proving that I can support both of you, not just financially but emotionally as well," he responded earnestly. Each word felt significant, noting the heavy commitment that accompanied them. A crackle of surprise ignited in Sarah's chest as she absorbed the magnitude of his statements. "You're serious?" she pressed, not wanting to get caught up in mere platitudes again. Dead serious, he affirmed, his posture steeling as he looked directly into her eyes. I've had time to think about my wrong choices. If I want to rekindle that trust, I have to show it in every facet of my life, including the ones that will challenge my comfort. Sarah took a slow, deep breath. She felt a tremor of excitement threading through her clarity. Could she dare to embrace this moment as a turning point for them all? She had spent so long clawing to feel empowered, and now the very possibility of agency was standing in front of her, daring her to reshape the future. We need to hold each other accountable, she declared, the decisiveness in her voice igniting a warmth within the cold walls of their past struggles. You can't just tell us what you're going to do, we need to regularly check in open dialogue, clear boundaries. Trust isn't one overnight. I agree, Jake interjected excitedly. And maybe we can have a family meeting every week? Just to talk about how things are going. Sarah smiled at her son's initiative. I like that idea, she said. It keeps all of us engaged and present. As they began to hash out plans for regular conversations, Sarah felt lighter. The burden of the past still lingered, but for the first time in years, she felt like they were moving forward intentionally, yet amidst the relief, unease coiled tightly in her stomach. What if Bill faltered again? Was she truly ready to unlock the door she had fortified for so long? Before she could voice her thoughts, Bill reached for his glass, looking directly at her. I know this is a fragile moment, but I'm determined to prove to you both that I can evolve into someone you can trust, no matter how many steps I need to take. The sincerity in his voice rang true as Sarah locked her eyes onto his. The room pulsed with uncertainty, but she could feel the heart of a hopeful new beginning beating beneath the surface. With the atmosphere charged with promises and potential change, a new thought crystallized within her, one that exploded with possibility. Let us put a timeline to it. If you're committed to making changes, let us set a date to review everything we've discussed. How about a month from now? She could see Bill's composure tremble slightly at the challenge. It was a test of his resolve, and she intended to uphold her own commitment to growth. Absolutely, he nodded, determination igniting in his gaze. As they clinked their glasses, Sarah felt the power of choice resound in her heart. The complexity of this situation was daunting, yet exhilarating. But lurking beneath the optimism was the unsettling realization that with commitment came significant risk. Could they all withstand the storms that still lay ahead? As she mulled over the uncertain journey before them, a fragment echoed within her. Perhaps true strength lay in seeking vulnerability amidst the chaos. Yet the thought swiftly shifted to a sense of urgency. If they were all on this path together, what would happen when confronted with the first slip or when the past came barreling back into their lives? A new reality beckoned outside their fragile bubble, and with it, the inexorable truth that the healing journey would soon expose their bonds to the ultimate test. As the weeks rolled by, the air crackled with transformative possibility within Sarah's household. The initial discomfort of that fateful dinner with Bill had given way to a palpable momentum. Each Friday evening, the promise of collective vulnerability served as a lantern, illuminating their shared path forward. The meetings often began with light-hearted banter. Jake would share his week, recounting anything from his school's latest escapades to his newfound interest in art. While their laughter nourished the atmosphere, the exchange also contained vital undercurrents of deeper exploration. They carefully navigated the tides of vulnerability, inching towards honest discussions of fears, hopes, and what family truly meant to them. At first, Bill's presence had felt like a foreign entity occupying space in a home fervently built on resilience against the past. But with every shared meal, he revealed the authentic self, his eagerness to learn, to reclaim his connection to Jake, and most importantly, his sincere need to prove himself to Sarah. His commitment resonated, encouraging the seeds of trust and understanding to bloom. Outside the realm of these dinners, Sarah had also embarked on an enriching journey herself. As she witnessed her son grow more comfortable around Bill, she found herself floating in the euphoria of their progress. Inspired by her son's willingness to forge ties in uncertain waters, Sarah began confronting the disquiet that she had shadowed for far too long. Therapy sessions became not only a place for her to shed layers of fear but also a source of newfound empowerment. Each conversation with her therapist revealed insights into her layered identity as a mother, as an individual who had endured a tumultuous past, and as someone who sought connection without fear. She finally began to see the possibility of who she could become, a realization that was steadily shaping her within the crisp walls of her therapy room. Over cups of steaming tea, she reflected on her fears, challenged the boundaries she had painstakingly constructed, and confronted the ghosts from her past. Each session peeled back the layers, propelling her towards moments of raw honesty with herself. One particular evening, as the golden sun dipped low and the air filled with a fresh promise, Sarah returned home with a reflective resolve. She felt invigorated, both by her radical personal growth and the strength she drew from interactions with Jake and Bill. "Jake," she called as she stepped through the door. "Can you meet me in the living room? There's something I want to talk about." Jake, perched on the couch with his latest sketchbook, looked up with eager curiosity. His eyes sparkled with the innocent enthusiasm of a teenager eager to explore new horizons. "Sure. What's up?" he asked, rolling up his sleeves. "Sit down," she said, motioning towards the cushion opposite her. "I need to share something important." As he settled in, Sarah took a deep breath, aligning her heart to her purpose. "I want to acknowledge how much I've seen you grow," she started, her tone steady but warm. "Those conversations we've had every week reveal a different family vision, and I want to thank you for being brave enough to embrace the uncertainties with Bill. In allowing yourself to connect, you've shown me how vital honesty is." Jake nodded, humbled by her words. "But there's more," Sarah continued, the words pouring forth with clarity. "In my journey, I've realized I've been holding on to a version of myself that was built on the past, a version that was afraid, doubtful." She paused, gauging his reaction. "I want to let go of those shadows and step boldly into a new chapter. I'm looking forward to sharing that with both of you." The moment hung in the air, a bridge of understanding forming between them. Jake's smile widened, a testament not just to her newfound resolve but to the bond they'd nurtured amidst their dynamic family landscape, and as she spoke those truths, a wave of satisfaction washed over her. She now recognized the strength rooted within her. It didn't lie in the shield she had embraced for years, but instead in the embrace of vulnerability and connection. Days turned into weeks, and with each Friday night gathering, Sarah felt herself step further into her authenticity. It no longer felt defined by the narrative of abandonment but was becoming a testament to resilience wrapped in a blanket of newfound love. She began nourishing her passion for pottery once more, the creative energy flowing through her hands, expression unfurling like the shade of blooms in early spring. Then came a glorious evening. Bill had planned a family outing, taking them to a local art show that showcased Jake's newfound talent. He had entered with nothing but hope and a dream, encouraged by those closely surrounding him. As they entered the gallery, Sarah stepped close to Jake, her heart swelling. "This is it, sweetheart. Your moment," she said softly. The evening unfolded like a symphony, laughter ringing between them as loose conversation danced with newfound admiration. Jake beamed with pride as he spoke about his pieces, and soon, the three of them found themselves in conversation with other visitors, people who vibrated with possibilities. As the night matured, Bill placed his hand on Jake's shoulder, an unspoken promise solidifying between them. Sarah glimpsed the growing bond, sensing the growth that had transpired not just in her son but in Bill even more profoundly. He wore sincerity as his character began to redefine itself. Lost in the moment, Sarah recalled the spiraling uncertainty that once plagued her existence. Now, gazing at the man who had walked back into their lives, she appreciated how far they'd journeyed together, all while understanding the importance of individual transformation. "Out of the ashes of our pain, we've rewritten our story," she thought to herself, as they reveled in the joy of newfound connection, laughter, and artistry. As she savored the moment, Sarah smiled inwardly, knowing that her journey transformed not only her landscape but also reflected an emboldened family scarred, yet learning together, each stepping toward their own unique achievements. She understood she would continue to confront her past, cherish her present, and rethink the limitless potential of their collective future. With a heart full of gratitude, she embraced the inevitable unknowns ahead. There was no turning back. Now, if you found this emotional conclusion satisfying, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel to follow more exclusive stories of personal transformation like this one. Leave a like now to help feed the algorithm and spread the message of growth. Comment below with your thoughts and predictions about what comes next. And don't wait even one more second. Share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to witness this journey of healing and breakthrough. Your support means everything.